September 7th, 2021. Thank you. The September 7th, 2021 City Council regular meeting. It is now 5:32, and may we have a roll call, please, Ms. Phillips?
Councilor Bossman.
Present.
Councilor Buell.
Here.
Councilor Youssef.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Present.
And Mayor Baxter.
Present. Thank you. Do we have any identifications of actual or perceived conflicts of interest among the councilors tonight on any agenda topics? Nope, seeing none. We'll move on. We'd like, if the translator is here, we'd like them to introduce themselves, please.
Mayor, the translators are not here yet.
Okay. You'll give me a heads up when they arrive so we can let them be introduced?
I will.
Thank you very much. Okay. So we're on to public participation. Thank you very much. This section of the agenda is set aside for the public to provide comments or ask questions regarding items that are not scheduled for a hearing or public testimony or that do not otherwise appear on this agenda. City Council will not respond to questions from the dais. Citizens should address their comments directly to the City Council. This is a virtual meeting also, and so there are avenues for public participation that I will be asking Tom about to see if we have anybody in the wings. You will have 3 minutes for your public comment, and there will be a timer up on the screen for you to watch. So we ask that everyone remain civil. Thank you very much. The first name on our public participation is Marcia Klauser. Would you like to come up to the dais, please, and state your name and if you're a city resident?
Hello.
Hi, so please state your name and if you're a city resident?
And what's the rest of it?
If you are a city resident?
I'm a county resident,
Well, then,
but I
great, okay.
did work in City Hall a while. Marcia Klauser.
And your comment is?
Marcia's here for the proclamation.
Oh, okay, we aren't to the proclamation yet, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought we all had to sign in.
No, this
So-
was just for public
May I sit
participation.
down?
Absolutely,
All right.
but we'll call you back up again, because I'm... Okay, Julie Riley.
Good afternoon. I think I may have signed up too early. I'm the attorney for the Durango Arts Center, so I'm here to answer questions.
During that agenda topic item, is that going to be is that on the consent agenda?
Yes, it
And are any of the councilors going to pull that one off of the consent agenda? No, so if you want to go ahead and make your public, if you have something you'd like to say, you could say it now for us, because otherwise we'll just be voting yes and it'll go through, or we'll be voting no and it won't go through.
We need your help on refinancing through Alpine City Bank to reduce the interest rate, adjust the term, get the interest rate fixed, and we hope we have your support, because we
Wonderful.
need it as your co-owners of the building.
Thank you very much. Bill Lemare. Didn't recognize you with your mask on.
Right, it's hard to see.
All right, Mayor Baxter, council, staff, my name is Bill Lemare. I'm a resident of Durango and chair of the Library Advisory Board. The Library Advisory Board asked me to thank you for the proclamation that you'll be reading a little bit later, and which will honor our library community champions for 2021, Marcia Klauser, who you've already met at the dais, and Corey McCarthy. Marcia was instrumental in building the Friends of the Library membership from probably, I don't know, probably double digits or something up to well over 500 members, many of them who volunteer at the library and at the bookstore. Corey McCarthy manages Common Grounds Cafe in the library, a project of 9R. Corey has made Common Grounds not only the best place to get a cup of coffee from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock, Monday through Friday, but she's also responsible for helping a number of young people who have various disabilities transition into the workforce. So I want to thank you for honoring these fine women this evening, and congratulations to Marcia and Corey. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate it. So now we're on to our proclamations and presentations. And the City Council enjoys acknowledging those who contribute to and enhance the quality of life in Durango. And so I will, citizens may request to have the mayor present a proclamation, which I will be doing. And then you can also, recipients may have 5 minutes to share some additional information if you'd like after I read the proclamation. So if you'd like to come up and stand next to me at the dais, we'll move this way. Hi, congratulations. 2021 Library Community Champions Proclamation. Can everyone hear me? Am I close enough? Okay. Whereas the success of any public library is enhanced and sustained by dedicated citizens, in recognition thereof, the Durango Public Library Advisory Board have singled out certain individuals for particular appreciation through its Library Community Champion Initiative. The awarding of this personal distinction honors singular achievement and commitment on behalf of the library and in turn the community. Whereas Marcia Clauser was nominated for the Library Community Champion Award for her tireless service to the Friends of the Library Board and her connection to library staff. Whereas Marcia served and continues to serve as a volunteer to Layla's Place, the Friends Bookstore. Whereas Marcia was nominated for her thoughtfulness, hard work, and friendliness to library staff and volunteers. Whereas the board wishes to recognize Corey McCarthy publicly for her dedication to Common Grounds Cafe, her students, the community, and the Durango Public Library. Whereas Corey was nominated for the Library Community Champion Award for service as the manager of the Common Grounds Cafe, a cafe that teaches employable skills to Durango high school students with disabilities. Whereas Corey's excellent management provides a warm and welcoming area for library patrons, and Corey's students bringing community members into the library specifically for Common Grounds. Whereas Corey's professional and welcoming demeanor makes it a pleasure to stop by Common Grounds and visit with her and her students. Whereas the Durango Public Library Advisory Board wishes to recognize Corey McCarthy and Marcia Clauser publicly for their dedication to the library and the community. Now therefore, I, Kim Baxter, Mayor of Durango, Colorado, do hereby recognize Marcia Clauser and Corey McCarthy as the 2021 Library Community Champions.
Sure. It's been a very interesting experience learning that I would hold this really wonderful title. And it's really hard to not think about all the hundreds of people in this community who have really just been there for Common Grounds over the years, donating funds and time, and our loyal customers. And so it's been an amazing experience just being a part of that community and seeing the students interact with the community and learn from each other. And at the same time, I am also overjoyed to accept this title. I really have put my heart and soul into it. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
It has been a joy and an honor to work at the library, starting with Sherry Tabor that I saw come through City Hall when they brought her back from Alaska to build the library. And then she tasked me with producing 500 members. And when we reached that in 5 years, she said, carry on, keep going. So we got up to about 800 individuals before I needed to step down. So it has been so much fun. And my spec letters I kept sending out to new arrivals in Durango was, this location was the heartbeat of Durango when it was Mercy Hospital. The library continues to be the heartbeat with the services and friendship that it offers the community. And I cannot tell you how wonderful. I've been in a lot of libraries, military libraries, especially around the world. And our staff is tops, and it has been for a long time. Caring, loving staff. The Friends are just like a big family. So we are very, very fortunate to have this beautiful, beautiful library and a gorgeous botanical garden outside, I might add. It's just very lovely for Durango's PR. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. So now we're on to the review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow the city council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 8. So may we have a reading, please, of the consent agenda?
Items 7.1 and 7.2 are approval of minutes. 7.1, the minutes from the August 17th study session. 7.2, the minutes from the August 17th regular meeting. Items 7.3 through 7.12 are discussion and possible action items. 7.3 concerns Resolution R 2021-49, creating and authorizing additional appropriation in the Airport Capital Projects Fund for terminal expansion design. 7.4 concerns Resolution R 2021-50, authorizing the execution of a deed of trust for the benefit of Alpine Bank to secure the refinancing of a loan to the Durango Arts Center. 7.5 concerns Resolution R 2021-51, identifying city employees authorized to place a call for water under the city's recreational in-channel diversion decree. 7.6 concerns Resolution R 2021-52, electing to carry forward the city's 2021 State of Colorado Private Activity Bond allocation of $1,059,415 to 2022 for possible use on future affordable housing projects within the city of Durango. 7.7 concerns Resolution R 2021-53, authorizing $25,000 to the Botanical Gardens project at the library from the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Fund. 7.8 concerns Resolution R 2021-54, authorizing additional appropriation to the Open Space, Parks, and Trails Fund for a Colorado State Forest Service grant for fire mitigation. 7.9 concerns Resolution R 2021-55, amending certain sections of Resolution R 2012-26 for purposes of enhancing duties and responsibilities and creating a council liaison position to the Community Relations Commission. 7.10 concerns Resolution R 2021-56, authorizing additional appropriation of the CARES Act funding to the Transportation Service Fund. 7.11 concerns Resolution R 2021-57, authorizing an appropriation to the general fund for the Rural Economic Development Initiative grant in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2021 budget. 7.12 concerns Resolution R 2021-58, authorizing additional appropriation to the general fund Housing Innovation Division for purposes of funding due diligence associated with the acquisition of the Best Western Durango Inn and Suites. Items 7.13 through 7.18 are requests for public hearings with a proposed date of Monday, September 20th, 2021. Just a public reminder that the September 21st City Council meeting has been moved to Monday, September 20th. 7.13 is to consider an ordinance authorizing a lease with Agile Space Industries, Inc. at the Durango La Plata County Airport. 7.14 is to consider a preliminary minor subdivision for Twin Buttes Phase 1, filing 1B Parcel H. 7.15 is to consider a preliminary plan review for the Florida Road Mixed Housing Project. 7.16 is to consider the grounds rezone. 7.17 is to consider amendments to the Land Use and Development Code. And item 7.18 is to consider the Hillcrest Golf Course fast track easement.
Thank you. Is that the last one?
That's the last one.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any items that a city councilor would like to pull from the consent agenda? No? Barbara?
I'd like to remove items 7.2, 7.6.
Slow down, I have to write this down, thank you. 7.2, 7.6,
7.11, 7.12, 7.16, and 7.17.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy, are there any agenda items you'd like to remove from the agenda?
Second. Yes, there are, just one, and I can state my question. It's item 7.7, and in the materials, it says that the
Could you wait,
25,000.
Barbara, can you wait till we all go through and see how many we're going to pull off and all that?
Sure.
And then we have to vote on the other ones before we get to those. Melissa?
7.10, please.
Jessica? And I'm going to pull 7.9. Okay, so with the exclusion, I'm just going to make this motion easy for somebody to make. With the exclusion of 7.2, 7.6, 7.7, 7.9, 7.10, 7.11, 7.12, 7.16, and 7.17, would someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as Mayor stated.
I can consent.
Is that a second?
Second, sorry.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Counselor Bosman?
Yes?
Counselor Buell?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes,
Mayor Baxter?
Yes, thank you. So now we will move on to for the ones that were pulled off. So we'll start with 7.2, which I believe was Counselor Bosman's.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify on that topic because it covers the Best Western acquisition where I voted no. And even though I still would have likely ended up voting no, I should have abstained because I didn't have the opportunity to ask all my questions and as such didn't have all the information I deemed necessary to make an informed decision. Secondly, the minutes should reflect that there was a time restriction put in place and that not all councillors, me in this case, had the opportunity to ask all the questions they had in a manner that is transparent and open to the public. That is the little change or clarification that I want to add there.
So do you want to make a motion to approve the minutes or what do you want to do?
So having said that, and if you guys are in agreement to that, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the clarification that there was a time restriction put in place, as I basically said. Do you want me to repeat it or?
It's okay. She's got it.
Well, I wouldn't support that because actually we didn't end up putting a time constriction in place. You actually got to end up talking as much as you wanted to. So I couldn't support that. So anyway, is there a second to the motion? Sorry, I was out of order.
I'll second it.
So the question on the table is to approve the minutes with the change that that someone was not allowed to ask as many questions as they wanted to. Okay. Any discussion? All right, shall we take a roll call?
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Bosman?
Yes?
Counselor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
I'm abstaining.
Mayor Baxter?
No. Okay, so on to 7.6, Councilor Bosman.
Okay, this is the election to carry forward the private activity bonds allocation for 2021 towards 2022. The letter and resolution are very specific in the use, even though it seems such a restriction is not required. The use is defined as affordable housing and it's even including the Best Western purchase. And that seems a little bit in contrast to the prior meeting, where some people on the council were pretty adamant to point out that the acquisition of the Best Western was to be done by a grant, no loans or bonds. That is not, well, okay. Nonetheless, it makes sense to carry forward the private activity bond allocation and have the opportunity to have it used for anything that is allowed for, without narrowing it down. Private equity bonds can be used for a whole range of things, which is stated in the document. I can run through it very quickly. Bonding capacity can be used for manufacturing, industrial development bonds, new construction or acquisition, and or rehabilitation of housing for low to moderate income people, single family mortgage, revenue bonds, mortgage credit certificates, qualified development bonds for acquiring property in blighted areas, exempt facility bonds, hazardous waste facilities, solid waste facility, water or sewers facilities, or qualified bonds for use by non-profit hospitals and private universities. So my first question is there any reason why we wouldn't keep that potential use of these private activity bonds as general as possible, as allowed by the regulations?
So this agenda item is not asking us to narrow it. It says for the possible use of the Best Western, but it's not asking to narrow it. All it's doing is asking us to move our ability to use them from 2021 into 2022. And they are private activity bonds. They don't get paid back. Just to make it clear there, that's not what it's for. So, not by us anyway, not by the city. So it's not about how they get used, it's about can we carry them forward to 2022.
To clarify that, I understand, and I actually am in favor of carrying forward. I just want to have all that allocation or specific language. I would like to have it removed. So it is basically saying it can be used for any, for any use that is allowed without narrowing it down.
Yeah, by definition, that's the way it is. It's not actually narrowing it down anywhere. It's just giving a suggestion of what was possible. It's not saying that's what would happen with them.
Okay, then maybe I'll reword that to make it easier. If you want to put some sort of use in there, then I would like to list, according to the definition of private activity bonds, that's in the letter beforehand, all the items that it could be used for, as for example, that was the list I just provided. I think if you put that narrow scope in there,
Okay, so you're saying on the actual resolution, you'd like to change the resolution to add that? Yeah, I think that's great. Can that be done, Dirk?
Yeah, I would kind of defer to Kevin. I think he's been working on this, and I know we had a conversation with Dee Weiser about this item. Were these Jaffa bonds?
Good evening, Council. Kevin Hall, Managing Director, Community Development. I think the intention here was to generally call out a project that was kind of looming for the city, or possibly others, but to Mayor Baxter's point, this doesn't preclude us from using the full scope of the various ways you can use the private activity bond. That said, Division of Housing would prefer that we call out potential projects that are looming, because typically what happens is if you're not using them, someone asks the community, can we use your PAB allocation? And we did that last year, our first ever allocation, and it went to the Tamarind Square Apartments here on 3rd Avenue. This year we didn't have anyone approach us to ask, so intention was let's carry them forward. When you look at the documentation for carry forward, it includes not only this resolution, but some indication of what the intentions might be. It's a little unclear in terms of the documentation from the state in that we can do this 3 years running. So essentially somewhere in the range of $3 million plus of private activity bond. But they are going to ask us, well, what do you have going on right now that would compel you to want to preserve these rather than giving them to Jaffa to move somewhere else around the state? I called out the hotel only because of the activity that's occurring with the hotel. It may or may not come to be the hotel. Could be, to your point, Councilor Bosman's, any number of projects would be eligible. They will continue to be. Certainly a modification to the resolution, I don't think affects that significantly, but they did ask us to call out a project that looks to be in the near term horizon for use of these funds. So that's what we did in this particular resolution. Our bond counsel also reviewed this, and admittedly, the context isn't the same to what you're just sharing your thoughts on. He didn't see any issues with the resolution as prepared.
Could we just add like, or other eligible projects?
Well, I think it is written that, and it is possible. I just don't want to narrow it down even by indication, especially.
But we need a
since-
project. He's saying that's what they're recommending. We have a project.
Is it required, and who requires it? And this is a resolution. Does this resolution go to them?
I think Councilor Buell's suggestion to just kind of have that, or other projects that are consistent with the requirements and criteria of the private activity bond program would do exactly what I think you're concerned about, limiting our ability to use these for only one purpose. We can have that other language in here, and I think there's a couple places, certainly in the staff report, where it speaks to or other eligible projects, and that'd be a simple way to modify the resolution so it could work for either.
I know from grants like this that if you don't have a project, that they'll say, you know what, they don't have a project, they didn't have a project, we're gonna move this to CHAFA, because we know CHAFA will give loans, and it may go to someone in our community and it may not, but it's important that it stays with us. And so if we say just literally like, or other eligible projects, then it incorporates what you're saying. Like, I agree that we don't know what in the end the Best Western's gonna be, but that we do have a project, so we should keep the money. It's advocating for that, I think.
I appreciate that, but I'm going to ask you, does this resolution go to DOLA or anybody of that sort?
This resolution goes to the Division of Housing, yes.
Yeah.
Along with some other documentation that we'll be preparing in the next week when it's due on the 15th.
And is there any difference, you think, would they take away that allocation, or do we have the allocation regardless of a project? Because it was my understanding that money is allocated to Durango based on population size, and that's it. So there's no one, if you apply for it and we qualify with the project, no matter what project it is, we have access to it. Excuse me.
You know, standing here right now, not having someone from Division of Housing here, I can't tell you with absolute certainty, but I believe if there wasn't a reference to this particular hotel project, it would still apply. I think some of the other documentation we're going to share probably will reference that we are in the process of working on this project, but as I call here as well, there's potentially any number of projects that we're unaware of today that could apply in the next 3 years. So our options here was really to allow CHAFA to use our dollars wherever or our PAB allocation, wherever they found a project to use it. It was to carry it over or to use it locally. And the intention here was just to carry it forward, really not to get into pinning it down on one particular project. And I believe the 3-year carry forward process allows us to have a little bit of flexibility to not be completely committed to one particular project. And I did talk to them about, this may or may not come to be, but this is a project that appears to be getting some real legs, and it may be of value to us. I don't believe this is the first preferred source of financing for the hotel anyways. It was actually just an additional resource available to us that could come to play for that project or any number of projects. And we could do this again next year at this time and have about $3 million of just city allocation available to us. So I believe we don't need to have the resolution reference this particular project if that's council's wishes, and just identified as eligible projects. And then the documentation and the discussions I have with CHAFA in the next week in terms of what we submit will also reference the fact that we do have some projects that are looming.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I think it simplifies and keeps it all general. I have one more question on this resolution. I think that's more for you, Dirk. The resolution states that the mayor is authorized to execute this resolution on behalf of the city. Is that typical language? As I scanned through some other resolutions and I don't seem to find similar text. Is it just a signature from the mayor on behalf of council, or maybe you can explain where that and how that works?
Well, I think to the extent that language isn't included in every resolution, and again, I think actually for the most part, Kevin drafted this, I reviewed it. I think D. Weiser was also involved in drafting it. So to the extent that this language isn't included in every resolution, it's certainly implied that the mayor has the authority. So once it's approved, then the mayor's signature is there just to show for the record that it's been approved and this is the final document. So I don't think there's anything meant by that other than the authorization to sign the document.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering if it's the council allocating those PABs to whatever entity, but it's not.
It's just
I
approving, it's just showing her signature on the mayor's signature on the resolution, that's all, yeah.
But then I would like to make a motion.
Barbara has her hand up. Oh, before you make a motion.
Barbara, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to make a motion that we follow the advice of Dean Weiser and accept the resolution as written with Councilor Buell's recommendation to include and other qualified projects.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Well, I wanted to make the motion, so I'm
Well-
a bit annoyed about that because I started off
Well,
saying.
Barbara hadn't had a chance to speak yet,
Oh.
and neither had Melissa or Jessica, actually. So we're going around and taking turns, and Barbara made a motion, and if we vote it down, then we vote it down, and you can make another motion. That's just how motions work.
Well, my objective was just to make the motion in a general language, the way the law is written in all these uses that are allowed by law. without
I understand, but we have a
exceptions.
motion on the table right now, so
Okay.
we should be discussing the motion and then voting on it, and if it doesn't pass, then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Well, you have to have a second first, I think.
I
She did.
seconded.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So the discussion would be, I would prefer to see this motion be very general, very simple, to allow the PABs to be used for any legal use allowed conform legislation.
Thank you.
Without reference to Best Western or a hotel or whatever project, because all of those would fall under that umbrella, including if there is a sewer facility emergency, we could apply it to that. So I think eliminate that narrowing down, keeping it general, and that's why I will vote
Thank
no
you.
against this one.
I think that as amended, it allows for all applicable uses of the dollars. So do you have other?
I was just going to suggest that I hear your concern, Councilor Bosman's, but I do think from what I'm hearing from staff and council that with this amendment, I feel comfortable that we aren't pinpointing it to anything in particular, so I'm okay with it.
Do you have any thoughts? No? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy, do you have any further discussion item on that?
No, just I'm pointing out that we use Dean Weiser, an esteemed attorney practiced in this, and we're making a modest amendment to his advice.
May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Buell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Yes,
Councilor Bosman.
No?
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Mayor Baxter.
Yes. Thank you. And then we'll move on to item 7.9, which was my remove. Oh, I'm sorry, 7.7.
7.7.
Sorry, Barbara. Yes.
7.7.
So that's the discussion and possible action concerning a resolution authorizing $25,000 to the Botanical Gardens project at the library from the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Fund.
Yeah, my question, when I read the documentation, and my apologies, my computer, it's not allowing me to pull up the documentation in real time, was that this 25,000 was approved by the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and to use the 2005 tax dollars. And it was my understanding that the Natural Lands Board was primarily the dedicated advisory board to help us think about the 2005 taxes. So while I am not necessarily opposed to this, I just wanted to see if the Natural Lands had discussed this, or should they be discussing it before it comes to us for recommendation?
I can tell you as a liaison to the Natural Lands Board that this hasn't come up on it as an agenda item, but I just wanted to let you know that. So we have Turi Nykum, our Parks and Recreation Director here.
Turi Nykum, Parks and Recreation Director. I was just simply going to state the same thing, that it came to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, but it has not been reviewed by the Natural Lands Board, so.
I think, well, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but are you asking whether or not council thinks that the Natural Lands Board should also discuss this prior to approving it, or prior to voting on it, or what are you suggesting?
I'd like to suggest that we go through the process, which is that the Natural Lands, and we don't circumvent them with another board, and that they actually have some say and opinion on how the 2005 dollars are directed.
Because.
I'd like to suggest a continuance.
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest a continuance. They can bring it back to us.
Right, because I just want to make it clear that the dedicated sales tax, the 2005, is applicable to not only parks, open space, well, it's applicable to parks, open space, trails, and so that does affect Parks and Rec as well as natural lands. Okay, so you'd like to ask for a continuance?
I guess my question is, I understand it can be used for Parks and Rec, but who is the main body to recommend how the 2005 dollars are used? And it was my understanding that that was primarily the Natural Lands Board in conjunction with the Parks and Rec. But if the Natural Lands hasn't even had a say in it, are we undermining their ability to help direct or influence those recommendations?
Has the Parks and Rec Board ever authorized spending of the 2005 and we've approved, and it's been approved, or no? What is the policy?
So it's kind of split between the two. Way back when, it was kind of split 50-50, but as we've moved forward in time, we're kind of looking more at projects-based and then looking at the split between the two versus just automatically going 50-50. It's not in the ballot language to be done any particular way.
If I also may ask, Mayor, my question is, at what level is it appropriate? Could the Parks and Rec approve, we want you to spend $500,000 on this project, and there's no discussion of the Natural Lands Board?
I think what I'm hearing, and I think you're right, is that essentially if they are dividing it 50-50 and say there's 500,000 for each of them, and this means that does it come out, here's the question, I guess, does it come out of the Parks and Recs portion of the 2005 dedicated sales tax? Because if it does, and they've kind of already agreed where they're going splitting the dollars, then it doesn't matter if the Natural Lands votes on it or not, if they've already agreed to that separation of dollars. So do you have a...
Yeah, I do have a concern that I'm not certain there's the policy written about that. And, where again is the room to respond to opportunities and challenges? If all of a sudden, one year we may need to use all of the 2005 dollars for an open space or a maintenance of open space project.
Right.
Then you've got another whole group thinking, well, you've got my money. And so in the spirit of trying to have it really be directed to priorities, I just think it needs to be a collaborative discussion.
So right now I couldn't tell you, and I don't think Turi could either because he's brand new, tell you what the allocation of dollars was for 2021 and what's remaining there given projects that have been allocated. So maybe that's the question that needs to be asked and answered. Is that that's part of what you're thinking? Okay. Does that work for council? Or?
Go ahead.
Is this a time-sensitive $25,000? Do they need it
Yes.
at a certain time? It is. Okay, so here's my suggestion is that, yes, we should have a policy. I 100% agree in terms of like the boards talking together. We've talked about this so many times, right? The boards being able to communicate, especially about sharing taxes, blah, 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 blah. $25,000 isn't the end all be all. I think I support this project. I can't speak for everybody else. And I'm going to support it now or if it's continued. And I think Barbara, you are as well. So I can make a motion in a second to approve it as is, but then we should, maybe in new business, actually work on a policy to move forward with what you're saying.
So are you making a motion?
Should I do that? Or
Yeah,
do you want to talk? Or no, I have stuff.
So there will be, if you want to make a motion right now, you can, and if there's a second, then there's always discussion. So it's however you want to do it.
I want him to speak because he...
I'm going to let Councillor Buell make the motion, but I want to point out that if I would make a motion now, which is what happened 5 minutes ago.
You're welcome to make a motion.
I was starting off, I would like to make a motion. So I think that's a little double
I
standard.
interrupted you because her hand was up, and so I do apologize.
But you're going to get the motion because I agree in a large sense to what you're saying. And not every project that Parks and Rec is trying to finance through this has to be approved by the Natural Lands and vice versa. And I think this would be an example where I think everybody's in support of it. It's just, are we going to
If it was a
drag
big project, I agree with Barbara. I think we would have gone back and made you work some more. But for right now, I'm going to make a motion to approve resolution. I'm not ready.
Actually, you can just say
Our-
it's item 7.7. on the
Item
consent.
7.7 as is.
And I second.
Any further discussion?
I would just appreciate it, and Jessica, I appreciate you pointing that out, and I too support it. I just want to call out that I think there's a real need for collaboration between these boards rather than siloed decision-making. So I just want to, it's a small example, but I'm hopeful that we'll see more collaboration between Parks and Rec, Natural Lands, and also multimodal. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, may we have a vote, please?
Councilor Bosman's,
Yes.
Councilor Buell,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy,
Yes.
Mayor Baxter.
Yes. Yay.
It's the small thing.
Okay, thank you for that, Jessica.
Yes.
Item 7.9, discussion and possible action regarding a resolution amending certain sections of Resolution R 2012-26 for purposes of enhancing duties and responsibilities and creating a council liaison position to the Community Relations Commission. And I pulled this because I had some concerns about the language. And I sent Dirk, I sent you a note, I think I copied council on it, about section 5, where it says that the commission, when requested, the commission will use its best efforts to resolve community conflicts and tension when the complainant falls within the jurisdiction and legal authority of the city of Durango. To this end, the commission may, A, consult or confer with public officials, individuals, and organizations when requested, B, render assistance, advice, and informed advocacy to agencies of local government, community groups, and individuals when requested, and C, provide information, guidance, and referrals for voluntary mediation and conciliation services to aggrieved individuals. And my concern with this, and I pointed this out, was, so when requested and by whom? So is it requested by council? Who makes that request? And is it the commission's job to resolve community conflicts or to support and help in resolving community conflicts? Because here it sounds like it's their job to resolve them. And then rendering assistance, advice, and informed advocacy. I'm a little concerned legally whether the CRC, and I'm not saying they do or they don't, and these people change all the time, so it's not about any particular person on the board, but are they qualified to give assistance, advice, and informed advocacy? And if they aren't, and they do, I don't know who qualifies them, but what happens if a group takes their advice and something really bad goes wrong with that? Then who's responsible for that? Is the city responsible for it because we've given them the authority to give advice? And then the same thing about guidance. I'm just concerned that we might be putting the city in a tough position here, and I'm not certain that that's the responsibility level that we really want the voluntary commission to have.
I think those are all good questions. This language has actually been narrowed quite a bit from the original resolution. I was not in the meetings when this was discussed. Perhaps, Councilor Noseworthy could comment on what the intention of this language was. I reviewed the draft, but this language came primarily from the members of the CRC. So it may be appropriate to continue this item and spend some more time on this particular set of language.
If I may, as the liaison, I would add that they have narrowed the language from the original resolution. I do see the mayor's points, and I don't think anything has to be resolved today. That I think that he raised legitimate questions that the attorney should look at, and that perhaps we can either look at coming back to it, if not the next council meeting, the one in early October, because that would give time for the CRC to have another public meeting and look at any of the comments or answers the city attorney might provide.
Would that work for you, Dirk, to do that? Okay, and would that work for council to have that continued? That's the word you used. I like that. Would that work for you too, Olivia?
Yeah, I think you asked good questions.
Yeah, okay. And that's okay for you, Barbara?
Yeah, do you need me to make a motion that it goes to continuance?
I'm not certain. Should we?
I think you would need to
Okay.
move to continue it.
All right, then you want to go ahead and do that, Barbara?
I don't have the documents in front of me to actually.
Well, okay, then I will move that we, item 7.9 on the consent agenda, we continue until our next opportunity to discuss it and have feedback from the city attorney for further information.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Counselor Buell,
Yes.
Mayor Baxter,
Yes.
Counselor Bosman's,
Yes.
Counselor Youssef,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy.
Yes.
And we're moving on to item 7.10, which was Councilor Youssef's.
Yes, and this should be easy, I think, and quick. Just a question on this. This is great news about the CARES Act funding for transportation. And it talks about two different awards, the $150,000 that will go for transit services in calendar year 2021, and the remaining appropriated in the 2022 budget for support of transit services. And so I just had a question for staff on that, and that I'm wondering when you will, and potentially it's probably in the budget process, recommending what will be, potential routes will be reinstated with that funding, or how will we prioritize that spending?
So Tom, is Sarah on the Zoom? And if so, can you bring her in? But Counselor Youssef, my recollection is this is going to deal with the 160 West possible route. And so that is scheduled to come
Okay.
at the next study session here in the next meeting
It is wonderful.
to discuss and gain more ideas on that side. But that's
Great
discuss
news.
Sarah's.
Okay, and that would be then potentially reinstated for 2022.
Yes, or sooner, depending if
Excellent.
how we're able to get. There's a couple things that we still need to resolve with staffing and fleet, but that's the process that we're looking to go through.
And in that discussion, and when we were talking about that with Sarah for the next study session, I would
There she
love to talk about how and why that route. And I know it's a very important one, but in consideration with the other routes that we had to cut. And you don't have to do that now because I wouldn't want to take the time. But when we're prepared and for the study session, I would love that information.
Sounds good.
Do you want to make a motion?
Okay, so I make a motion to approve item 7.10 after those questions were answered. Thank you.
I can second that.
Second.
Any further discussion? No? May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy,
Yes.
Counselor Youssef,
Yes.
Counselor Buell,
Yes.
Counselor Bosman's,
Yes.
Mayor Baxter.
Yes. And now we're on to 7.11, which is discussion and possible action concerning a resolution authorizing an appropriation to the general fund for the Rural Economic Development Initiative, Ready 21-256 grant in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2021 budget. And this would be Councilor Bosman's.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I hope this is also a short topic. Well, we're on a roll. I had a question for staff. If they can explain the grant and where this money will go to, and then specifically, what is meant with in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2021 budget?
Good evening, councilors. Scott Shine with Community Development. The first question was, who will the money go to? Is that what,
Yeah,
did I hear you right?
Explain the grant, where this money will go to, and specifically I was looking for what is meant with in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2021 budget.
So the first question, we've been working with the Economic Development Alliance to apply for this grant, and we plan to pass through the money to them to complete the project. The second question, I think, is pretty standard language for an appropriation. Because we are receiving these monies and we didn't budget for them in 2021, we need to come back to you and ask you to appropriate them, allow us to include them in the budget. So it's pretty standard language. We're receiving the money from DOLA, so it's in excess of the amount budgeted in 2021.
Okay, I have no further questions, so if you guys are okay, I'll just make the motion. Thank you, Scott. I'd like to make a motion to approve item 7.11.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Counselor Youssef,
Yes.
Counselor Bosman's,
Yes.
Counselor Buell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy?
Yes. Now we're on to 7.12, discussion and,
She said Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy. I
oh,
think
I'm
you said
sorry,
yes.
I'm so used to Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think I said yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Absolutely, yes. Okay, 7.12, discussion and possible action concerning a resolution authorizing an additional appropriation to the General Fund Housing Innovation Division for the purpose of funding due diligence associated with acquisition of the Best Western Durango Inn and Suites. And this was Councilor Bosman's also.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions for staff. There you are. Thank you. And I think it's probably visible somewhere in the documents that you had sent, but I'm going to just ask the questions. The cost of the consultant, Project Moxie, is $42,000, and the scope of work specifies the Best Western acquisition. The cost includes project management, contract management, support with communication and community engagement, and support with feasibility analysis. It mentions also due diligence. So my first question is this due diligence that is mentioned here under this topic part of their cost, or is it an additional appropriation of $50,000 in addition to that $42,000?
So, good evening, Mayor Baxter, members of the council, Nicole Killian, Assistant Director for Community Development. And this is an additional appropriation. So, in the mid-year July appropriations, we appropriated the funds to pay for the Project Moxie support. At that time, we didn't know, we just paid for some consulting support for the process. And so that is already covered. This is for just the due diligence cost. Project Moxie is going to be the one overseeing that process for us. And they will be contracting with, our geotech, whoever's going to do the appraisal and all of that. And then this money will go to pay for those fees. Now, when we get a development partner, it's possible that we don't have to cover all this cost anymore, that the development partner will come in and cover some of it. But we don't know that yet because we don't have somebody on that piece yet. So this is just because it's such a tight due diligence process, we need to have the funds available. It doesn't mean we're going to plan on spending all of it. It's just having that availability so we can do the due diligence process.
Okay. I have a couple more questions on this topic. We had discussed during the prior meeting that the acquisition would be paid for by, for example, the grant that could be used for opportunities like this, or funding such as loans or bonds. So my question is if this upfront, and actually Project Moxie as well, so the $92,000, do those projects costs, those upfront costs, do they come out of the funding of the actual project and get reimbursed? Or is this a cost paid for now upfront by local taxpayers?
So we can get reimbursed when we ask for that congressional funding. It can cover this piece of it. If we don't get the congressional funding, we're also already looking at some other funding opportunities as well that we could put this into that piece as well.
Okay, well that's good news. And I'm going to explain something because a lot of people here don't know, but I do project management and EHS consulting, and I've been doing that for over 20 years. And a part of what I do is due diligence work, yeah, and I do this mostly for industrial, commercial sites and new developments, and I've done some hotel acquisitions as well, even though not this small. So I wanted first to explain that, so you know that I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. But I also wanted to make council aware that this due diligence work is not, is going to answer all the questions. And this $50,000 if it's spent, because, for example, if you do a geohazard study or geotech, as you call it, we already know that such hazards exist. It will not give us an idea of mitigation work. That will be a whole different engineering study, which costs a fortune, a lot more. Asbestos survey will tell you the first asbestos that you can identify, but it will not be, if there's a risk for asbestos, it will require still a thorough destructive asbestos survey if you do major renovations. So I'm just trying to point out to you guys that we're not looking at this and this is it. We will look at this, if this moves forward, you're gonna have a whole bunch more expenses upfront that we're gonna have to incur to make an informed decision.
I can address that. So the plan here is to get a development partner who will take over ownership of the property and do the conversion process, including asbestos remediation. City does not plan on partaking of that piece of it.
Okay, well,
So this is really to tie down the property, like we've said before, so that a development partner can come in and do the project.
I think that's good information, because I'm concerned of, opening the floodgates and we just keep spending money before we know.
Well, and it always
so
has to come
committed.
back to you.
Yeah, but
You
it's,
can say no at some point if the city's, not willing to put more funds towards the project.
yeah, and I think maybe just for your information, I do this over 20 years. I've never, ever had a client that made a full offer on a property without having done its first initial assessment on potential exact uses, how the cost structure would be, what they can do, before they reach out to even the first due diligence. So to me, this is unusual. I'm not sure if governments typically work that way, but none of my clients.
It's unusual for us too, because it's the first time we've done this. And ideally, we would have had a development partner first.
Yeah.
But because of the hotel and it went on the market and came back off the market, we felt we needed to jump on that, tie it up, and then get the development partner. If this one doesn't work out and we want to still look at other hotels, hopefully the process we're going through right now, the RFQ process, will secure a development partner. And that way, if we do look at something else, like this property does just not work for us, and we look at something else, we'll have that development partner in place at that point, and the city will just be that conduit to receive, to get funding that the developer can't go after.
Yeah, and I think, for a lot of people here, this is a learning curve. I always hope that people that are involved do their homework and ask the questions, similar as I did 2 weeks ago on the city council meeting, because a lot of these questions, we have fantastic staff in the city departments and the planning department. They know their stuff, and I can answer some of these questions. So you can do that first level assessment internally without spending any money, which will give you an informed basis for a decision to move forward and actually spend money on consultant due diligence. I just wanted to point that out to my fellow councilors, whether you take it or not. I'm not going to make a motion, but I'm sure I know where this will end up.
Are there any other questions by council or discussion about this?
Barbara has her hand up.
Barbara?
If there are no other questions, I'd like to make a motion. So I'd like to move that we accept the resolution as written.
Item 7.12.
7.12, yes, thank you.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion?
I just real quick want to add, I think that, because there was a lot of tension last meeting, and I appreciate you asking some questions, because all of these discussions we've had were in executive session. And I do think that our community should know answers to those questions. But I feel like Jen and Nicole have done initial due diligence and have looked at possible, outcomes for this project. And I feel comfortable with that. And sometimes I feel like if it doesn't go the way that you intend sometimes, that you make it sound like it either didn't happen or that we don't understand. I worked in construction for 8 years, commercial construction. I don't, we all are intelligent, we can all read and we can all do our homework. And so that's the only thing I would say is trust us that we're also doing our homework, and I do appreciate anyways the questions that you brought to an extent, and then letting us go forward with the decisions we make, if that makes sense.
No,
Okay.
And if there's anybody who wants to know more about due diligence work or acquisitions,
Yep.
be happy to explain it to you.
Councilor Youssef, do you have any?
No, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy, do you have any more comments?
No, just that I think, I also have experience in large public-private developments and due diligence. So I think that, the expertise is appreciated, but I also would like to reinforce that I think we all do our homework. And I think the staff while we question the staff, and that's legitimate, I also want to recognize them for the great work and the speed with which they're working right now. Thank you.
So I just had two comments. One was I wanted to add to your list of why we took this opportunity when we could, and one of them was because of the congressionally designated funds that could possibly be available. So this was a really great way to possibly fund this project to, so we asked for $9.5 million. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody realized that was also one of the reasons why we stepped up when we did. And then I also wanted to mention that the original contract with Project Moxie was not specifically about the Best Western. Is that true? It was more about helping the city develop housing ideas and ways to create housing and that type of thing. So it's not associated specifically with the Best Western project.
Correct. We had a current contract with them, and then as part of that, I was pulling them in for some expert advice as we're going through this hotel process. And so now they're the expert that's been helping us as we sole sourced them for the second piece.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we understood that they weren't hired specifically in the first one for the Best Western.
Correct.
It's for other consulting, housing consulting types. Okay, great. May we have a vote, please?
Certainly. Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Bosman's?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. And now we move on to 7.16, a request for a public hearing to consider the grounds rezone September 20, 2021. And that one is also Councilor Bosman's.
Just a second.
Scroll down.
Which one was it? Was
6.16.
16, oh yeah. This, also is a question for staff, probably. I looked at this area, I'm not very familiar with it, nor with the neighboring properties. I've seen it, but I'm not familiar with the uses. So my question is, did it go through the planning department and the planning commission? Are both in favor with the rezoning to the point that a public hearing makes sense? Because the request is for a public hearing. Or is it in the earlier stages in the planning department and the planning commission, and potentially subject to changes which would make the whole public hearing a little premature?
Thank you, Councilor Bosman. Members of the council, Scott Shine with Community Development. This is a formal rezone application, and the Land Use and Development Code requires that it go to Planning Commission. They make a recommendation to you, City Council, you make the final decision. So that has happened already. Okay. This will be the final public hearing.
Okay, well then I move a motion, I'll make a motion to approve item 716.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on that item? No? May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosman's?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Now we're on to item 7.17, a request for a public hearing to consider amendments to the Land Use and Development Code, September 20, 2021. And this one is also Councilor Bosman's.
I'm on a roll. This is the last one. And thank you, Jose, for explaining that a lot of these consent items typically would have been vetted and not on the consent.
Well, at the staff, we've been focused on efficiency, and the staff went ahead and tried to get it all done in one fell swoop. So, it was just one of those parts where we probably needed some more vetting and looking at it. They should have been fit in some other areas, but we'll take this as a learning, and we'll continue to move forward.
All right. Back to the item 717. It's about the amendments to the Land Use and Development Code. This agenda item was later added to the first agenda we had for today. And I have received very little information beforehand, and I would have liked to see a little bit more because it's such a serious topic with potential significant consequences. I've heard concerns from many people in our community about changes to density where multi-unit properties would be allowed, especially as it pertains to it mentions established neighborhoods. And it's a bit similar question as I had before sending it out for public comment and going the whole full circle. I would have thought it would be beneficial to hear exactly what these changes are and have some discussion at the council level beforehand. Again, if this is the procedure, it's maybe not possible. And I would also like to see the summary of the planning commission meetings and potentially the minutes. I think multi-unit properties could be a good tool, obviously, to add density, but I also believe we need to be very cautious on where such uses are allowed and respect established neighborhoods, the character, and I'm worried that in 10 years or so from now, we have uncontrolled, if it's not, and I'm sure you guys have managed this pretty well, but I'm always on the cautious side. I don't want to see 10 years from now that we have some uncontrolled growth across the city with multiplexes everywhere where there was a vacant or an older building, and there's no identity or character left in our neighborhoods. So my question is there an opportunity, even at the council level, before it goes to a public hearing, and you just explained a little bit about that, is there an opportunity for us to have a better understanding on what is proposed, so we are at least in alignment? And if that's possible, I would request that this item be moved forward to a later date, but please do
Good evening, council. Yeah, procedurally, the request for public hearing just sets the hearing date. So this is an opportunity for the public to know that it's coming up, for you to know that it's coming up. We haven't in the past provided a lot of supporting documentation for that, but when we come for the public hearing, we do a full presentation. We have dialogue with the council. The minutes are in the packet for the public hearing, along with any public comments we receive. So that's just been sort of the standard procedure. If you feel like this is a bigger change that you want to address in a different venue, we'd be happy to do that. But again, Planning Commission has seen it. They held a public hearing and they're recommending approval of those changes. And again, this is just setting the hearing date. And then when we get to the hearing, that's when we'll beef up the materials provided and be ready to answer questions.
And if I may, Councilor Bosman, let me just mention something, that if when we get to that public hearing and we're having these conversations and we want to continue it, or we want to have a special study session on it, we can absolutely do that. There's nothing that means that this is the only time we'll talk about it or the only time we'll consider it.
Okay. Yeah, the last topic was an application by an entity or a private owner for rezoning, and that triggered the public hearing. Is that correct? And this one is initiated internally.
Correct.
To go through the stages. So to me, I would really like to hear more beforehand, before it becomes a public hearing, and we spend the money and the time and to get my thoughts around it, because I think it's an extremely important topic that deserves a lot more attention than just run it through the system so quickly. I might be the only one, but so my motion would be to.
I have my hand up. I have my hand up before you go to motion. May I ask a question?
Go ahead. Well,
thank you.
Actually, wait a second. So I'm sorry I can't see you when you raise your hand, but yes, you may absolutely make a motion. One of the things I would also like to say, though, is oftentimes we try, and I was going to tell you this before, too. I didn't hear you before when you asked to make a motion. As Councilor Buell said, she said something, so I did not hear you say that, so I apologize for that. But go ahead and make a motion.
So I would like to make a motion to continue this topic and have it returned to us as a discussion, maybe during a study session. Not sure if I can make that complex of a motion, but.
Is there a second? Having heard none.
Can I make a comment, though, why I'm not seconding it?
Absolutely. Actually, Barbara had her hand up.
Barbara, you go first, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I'd like to suggest, Olivier, that in the interest of efficiency and time, that I know you're new, you and Jessica are new to the council, and maybe a primer on what constitutes a public hearing and the process might be in order, rather than taking something that's on a consent agenda. And whether you agree it should be on there or not is great. But if we're going to talk about changing the order, that might be a discussion at a study session. So for me, the other option might be perhaps you getting clarification individually on how the process has worked. We can always improve the process, absolutely. But I think this is about a public hearing. We'll have plenty of time to get our full, deep into the discussion of, what the recommendations are. Thank you.
Councilor Youssef.
I would just suggest that I think in Counselor Bosman's defense, it is sipping through the fire hose at first, and you do start becoming more familiar with the processes with time. And one of the things that I was going to suggest to you is that I've seen us make revisions to the land use and development code through this very process. And it's very meticulous, and they will redline it for you very acutely. You will see every single word that they're changing in the code. And so I've literally watched them go through this before, and what they're suggesting here is that these are minor adjustments. And so I think that that's why I support this process, is because I've seen it be effective in the past.
And I would just echo what the mayor has said, that once you have the hearing, you hear from the public. If there isn't clarity, you can give direction to staff and continue the item if you're not comfortable moving
No, I
forward.
appreciate all that explanation. To me, I bring it up because I think it has a lot of consequences, and I thought for efficiency, so contrary to, so in my opinion, efficiency would be greater if we don't go through a very extensive route with public hearing. At this point, if I don't even know what it is, and I even can tell you if I stand behind what is being proposed. So to me, my first impression is I put the cart in front of the horse, because I don't even, but it's okay. If you guys feel comfortable that this process, I stick with my motion, but obviously I'm not going to get a second. So it's okay.
So can, in the interest of time, because we have a 6:45, do we have a motion on this 7.17?
Yeah, I'll move to approve 7.17 as is.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Great, may we have a vote, please?
Is it Counselor Youssef? Did you make the
I
second?
did.
Okay.
We both did. That's fine.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Buell?
Yes.
Counselor Bosman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. And now we move on to item 10, which is executive session. And it's 10.1, discussion and possible action concerning an executive session for potential purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real and property within the city of Durango, CRS 24-6-4024A, positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, or instructing negotiators, CRS 24-6-402-4E, involving real property owned by GRVP LLC in Three Springs. Unusually, we are going to have this executive session here in this room. And so any people who are not a part of this conversation will be asked to leave. And also, Victor, you know that we won't be on air and we won't be published while we're in the executive session?
Correct.
Can I get a confirm from you on that, Victor? Should I wait till the on-air light goes off, or how do we do this? And we need to vote to go into session.
We should make the
And Mayor,
vote, and then.
Mayor, will I have to dial in again to the Zoom, as a Zoom attendee?
Yeah, the other executive
Yes,
session.
but let's make the motion first and move into it. I wanted to be sure that Victor was ready for this, and I'm not.
He did, he came on.
Okay.
I move to move into executive session.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Counselor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy?
Yes.
Counselor Bosman?
He'll be right back. Sorry, I don't know what else to tell.
Well, it's
We
okay,
may
it's
have to
gone.
wait.
Well, we can vote.
Okay, okay.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Yes, so we have the majority required, but we should wait for.
Requires two-thirds,
count.
yeah,
That's
but we
right.
have that anyway, yeah.
Sorry?
I said it requires two-thirds, but we have that anyway.
We're reconvening this meeting. I reconvene this meeting at 7:45. For the record, council met in executive session to discuss potential purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property within the city of Durango as permitted in CRS 24-6-4024A, and to discuss positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, or instructing negotiators as permitted in CRS 24-6-4024E, specifically involving real property owned by GRVP LLC in Three Springs. No decisions were made. If anyone who participated in the executive session believes the discussion went beyond the proper scope of the executive session, please state your objections now. Seeing none, the next item of business is public participation.
The second one,
Sorry?
just the second one after the executive session. You probably don't have any.
Okay, I didn't realize we were going to have two public participations in one night. Is that the way we're going to do all our meetings?
That was how I understood that we would be doing it when we have to have an executive session, then afterwards, so.
Okay, all right. So do we have anyone waiting in line on the public? Because I don't see anyone here in person.
We do not, Mayor.
Okay, great, thank you. So then we'll move on to public hearings, of which we have none. Our city attorney doesn't have any items either, no? All right, and no ordinances, administrative, Jose Madrigal, a city update.
Yes, just again, apologies on the agenda there, placing all the items on consent agenda. We will definitely look at kind of placing them a little bit more for some of those items that may have more discussion. Don't have any updates except for just as a reminder to the council and just to the citizens that I will be at a conference on leaving tomorrow for Thursday and Friday, Local Government Hispanic Network annual conference. While I am out, Kevin Hall will be acting city manager. And that's my update.
And the mice will play? And the mice will play while the cats away.
Probably.
All righty, thank you very much. City council reports and actions. Please include your advisory board conversations with your reports and actions. Anyone have any information for us?
I can
I do.
start. Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. So let's see here, who did I have? What did I have? I had the Durango-La Plata County Airport Commission, August 19th. July 2021 passenger traffic finished at a remarkable 127% of 2019 levels. So now that is the busiest month of all time at DRO, as the last month was prior. Now it's July. Still, face masks are required by all passengers and visitors inside the terminal. You have to wear one. So right now it's still on September 13th, but maybe I'm sure it'll be extended. I think they're saying through the first of the year. Frontier Airlines, extended their weekly nonstop service between Durango to Denver through at least October at 2 times weekly frequency. The adopted 2020 terminal area plan study outlines the long-term development for terminal facilities at DRO. And then with air travel recovering strongly, they're soliciting a design proposal right now for the initial phases of the terminal development. They have like a half phase right now that they're looking at. The runway rehabilitation project is tentatively planned for 2022. As we are a single runway, when they do that, it'll be closed. And so they're working carefully on, timing for that. But we're just under design right now. And that's it for that one.
Can I ask a question about your first one?
Yes.
Do we know the difference if it's tourism or if it's our own residents traveling?
So tourism is still higher, business travels down still, but local and tourist travel are up.
So our residents are traveling now
Yes.
too?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
But not, business is still down from 2019, business travel. So.
All right, thank you.
And then I had the Creative Economy Commission meeting on August 31st. After the meeting, we had our discussion about the lodger's tax with key members of the Commission and the Durango Creative District. But during the CEC, we talked about the Durango Art Brigade. All but one art piece, I think, has been installed. Some have started to come down because they're like phased selling, but a lot of them are still up. And I think there's one left to go, but it was super successful and great to see art all around town. The Common Threads project, I'm sure we saw the article in the paper, but we again got no bids with the RFP that went out. Everyone is saying that they're just too busy for a smaller job like this, and that's their excuse at the moment, even with the additional money that we appropriated a few city council meetings ago. And so I think we are going to try again in the spring. Because we all still really want that piece to go where it was intended. However, if in the spring we still don't get any bids through the RFP, then we're gonna look at working with the artists on a new location with potential easier installation. So, but we're gonna really try again in the spring to get it there. We had the lodger's tax update like I presented in the study session. We looked at a variety of new murals for the pet house mural that was given a grant, and we approved a new one that they showed us with the Durango Creates grant. And then we approved funding for the Moments project. I don't know if you guys know, I didn't even know about the Moments project until this. And so it's like a walking tour around a lot of downtown Durango area. And I'm like, have I lived here for 20 years and I don't even know that this is a thing. But anyways, super cool. But we approved funding so they could print more brochures so people could see where, because it's a walking tour. And then there's one like North End, Fort Lewis College has some, so you have to drive to some of them, but a lot of them are downtown. So we have brochures that we approved to get printed for that. So that is my news.
Great.
Excellent.
I have an update too. Do you want me to go? Okay.
Go ahead.
I just have one. I attended the library advisory board, and I will suggest it was a big meeting to be thrown into for my first meeting on this board, because they didn't have a meeting this summer. And the first meeting when I was elected, it was that very night, or when I was selected for that board, it was that very night, and I was not aware of it. So it was my first meeting. And we discussed applicable laws and election procedures if there is an election for the formation and funding of a library district. We heard from Tiffany Lee, who advised us on the process. They referred to often the example of the Southwest La Plata Library District, which has the two branches, the Sunnyside Public Library and Fort Lewis Mesa Library. They talked about the petition and election process if we decide to move forward. They talked about forming a committee that goes out to the community to determine the sentiment around the formation and the funding of a district. For the 2022 budget, they're requesting funding for financial analysis and a feasibility study to get and surveys of people to establish questions and find out what people would support. And there was a discussion to urge the formation of a committee with the council, the county, and residents to go forward with finding out community interest and what we would do with the money if raised. And the discussion around a need for a director first to make sure that they are backing it. And then there was a discussion around the need to make sure that there is council support for the financial and feasibility study. So I was had my head spinning, and I wanted to ask Jose possibly for an update just quickly on our interim director position and any thoughts around that and all of this.
Okay, on the director position, Aaron and I are still working on it. We're getting close to being able to make an announcement here relatively shortly. I think she's preparing correspondence out for the council and the library advisory board here momentarily, either later this evening or tomorrow morning to find out, to finalize that. We're just working with one candidate that I think we're getting too close to a deal, so we just want to make sure that we're able to do that. Then that would be just for interim purposes of the position for the library director.
Okay. And we do have that information for the feasibility study and financial analysis potentially going forward for the 2022 budget, or is it too early to
Yes, it is in the
say?
feasibility analysis. It is in the budget for 2020. I keep getting my years mixed up toward 2021, so it'll be for 2022.
Okay.
That is placed in the budget at this time. At this point, I have just begun meeting with department heads to get their proposed budgets for each of their departments and just getting an understanding of it. I did meet with library on Friday, and that was included in their proposed budget.
Okay, so lots going on over there.
Thank you.
Is there more discussion with the city and county on the district formation or not?
Very, very good question. I know that in the past, in our joint meetings, we've definitely talked about moving in this direction and exploring the idea of whether there is community support for this possibility. Because we've always struggled with getting the library open on Sundays. We recognize how valuable of an asset it is. And so I think that's kind of where we are now in the latest discussions we've had. It's just kind of, we've agreed that we will move forward to explore it, and they are definitely having the conversations to do so.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering if this is one of those examples where you could do an initial assessment, poll the community before spending the money. But I guess we're already spending the money, or at least budgeting it for next year.
Yeah. I don't know how, I think they do statistically valid surveys possibly in these cases.
We definitely would, be able to look into that portion. We are following the guidance that we received from the boards of county commissioners and city council joint meetings that they had in regards to the feasibility analysis. So that's what we're following. We're placing that in the placeholder of the budget. And of course, I'm sure we'll have that discussion as the budget process continues to develop as we look at that portion in there.
Yeah, I wonder, should it be a topic on the next city and county meeting?
Might be a good one. For an update?
Sure. Is there council support for suggesting to staff to
I'm
reach out?
glad you're asking that question, because they were definitely suggesting that in the library advisory board. They wanted us to follow up with that.
So I would be in favor of that too.
Okay, me too. Council?
And the what? And the city
Yeah,
attorney meeting?
I'm confused.
What I can't hear you very well, sorry. It's all the things in between us,
I know.
IDA.
Let me reword it again. To see if council supports having a discussion with the county on what the status is, where we are and where we're going with it.
Yeah,
with the district
we did.
formation.
But on the next city county meeting, I think is what he's saying. I think that the library district should be a kind of an ongoing.
Absolutely.
Agenda item,
For
for sure.
On the Board of
Yes.
County Commissioners meeting and,
Yeah.
not on a city council meeting, but
Correct.
a Board of County, okay.
Join one.
Yeah, that was what I wasn't clear on.
I couldn't hear.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was-
I agree.
Okay,
The
good.
camera.
Well, let's remember to do that then. Thank you. That's all I had.
Shall I go? So I have two updates, and I'll wait with my other comments until Mayor Baxter has given her update. Not sure if she has one here. Multimodal Advisory Board met on August 18th. We discussed Logistax and their suggestions and recommendations, as well as Fort Lewis College. Staff provided an update on transit, the budget, and outlined that there are significant funding options, and also reminded us that it includes parking tickets and meters. There's a multimodal projects update, transportation plan update, which included a transportation plan update, which are developing the 30-second traffic calming project, the Midtown Safety Connectivity, Camino Crossing, and College and 8th project. They finalized the priority for the capital improvements project. There were a couple of projects switched, so that was the last change, and I think that will come to be discussed with the Parks and Rec, multimodal, and maybe National Lands. I think that's the three. Then there was a Parks and Rec Advisory Board study on the 18th. There was a conflict, so I wasn't present during that meeting. However, it was more of an informational meeting type regarding board protocols, non-substantive emails, and open meeting laws. Dirk, I believe, was attending and presenting on that one. Development of meeting agendas and the creation of subcommittees. That's the two I had, and then I have my other topics, which we'll do
Go ahead.
after. No, I'll finish after you.
I don't have anything.
Oh,
Thank you. Go
okay.
ahead.
So, does anybody else have topics to add, or?
I'm done.
Okay, I have four topics here. One is it is actually a board, Infrastructure Advisory Board. This is in follow-up to Mayor having a meeting with, I think, Alison Baker and Jared Riggs, discussing water treatment capabilities. You wrote your thoughts and analysis, and this is where I'm leading to. I'm just trying to grasp what this means and if it's conform the structure of government in boards and commissions. So you suggested that you would go over your thoughts during an infrastructure advisory board meeting. So when I read that, I thought, is that the way boards were supposed to function? Does it influence infrastructure advisory board if a council member presents or explains a position? Does it go against the objective of any boards and commission? It's not just an example that I saw that triggered this. Because the boards and commissions make a recommendation to the council, and then it goes to the council for discussion. And that would be, transparent and open to the public. So is that the right way to go about? Because if anybody starts presenting on a board and commission, no matter what that board or commission is, then, if it's the water treatment plant, then I would like to do that too, because I know it will have an impact. Mm-hmm. So what is the right procedure to separate the functioning of a board and commission from the council's open discussions during regular meetings or study sessions? And I throw it open as a question, because it's not.
I feel like you two are probably better suited to answer this question than you looked at me. I was like,
I'm trying to make sure I don't just have my back to you. Yeah,
This question, I feel like maybe you two are better suited to.
Us two?
What?
Us
The two of you.
Melissa and I.
Yes,
Okay.
Melissa, sorry. Yes, Melissa and you, just because you've been, the protocols, you've lived this, breathed this for many more years than I.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be looking at you. And honestly, I feel a little bit like I don't understand. I may have missed the email, so I didn't know that you were presenting to.
I'm not presenting at this point.
So I guess
The email says something like, I'd be happy to explain this at a board meeting, and then someone of the board said, we could try and fit you in to present your position or to go over your comments in that letter, and then the meeting didn't work out. I mean, I don't memorize these things. So
right,
it's in an
I missed
email,
that, yeah,
we all
okay.
have it because it went to city council. And I don't want to pick on this project.
Yeah.
It's just an example of how boards and commissions are to be separate from the council, and how we are not, or are we supposed to? I mean, as a liaison, I always have trouble, and I try to really focus not to participate, because I have my opinion, but I can't say it.
Right.
Because I have to say it during this meeting. Yeah.
So since maybe it's personal with Kim, I'm going to just say some things that I've noticed. So I feel the same way in terms of a little confusion, like when you brought the OK Gardens to council. If I would have known that I could have said no to executive session, I guess, I probably wouldn't have gone into executive session for that, because Parks and Rec hadn't recommended that project. Does that make sense? But because I didn't know, I said yes, and then, whatever ensued. And so I feel like as a city councilor, my job on the boards and commissions is to, if they have projects or they have, ideas, is to kind of steer them where we think council would approve a project or would approve what they want. Kind of, does that make sense? And I know how you guys think. I mean, I've barely have worked with you that long, and I can pretty much say, oh yeah, I think I know where Olivier would fall on this topic and how to get you on board, right? We want to have these amazing projects, and we want to do amazing things in our community. And so I think that is our job as counselors, right? Is to kind of be a liaison for council. I don't want to just bring my opinion to that is 100% when I am on the Creative Economy Commission or I am sitting with the airport, I'm not talking for myself. Absolutely not. I'm speaking for like Durango and City Council, and like, this is how I believe. I'm not going to speak for you guys and like say for sure, but like to get to yes, this is what I think we need to do. And that would be my hope, that when you sit on multimodal, you're not just thinking about yourself and what you want, but you're thinking about council. And that's what we represent, right? Like I consider us like a unified group. And
Yeah, but I think you go in a direction that I think, maybe can I just give you a little bit because my intention during any of these board, which I was of the understanding it is you listen, and that's it. And you report back to council what is discussed. I don't steer anything, at least, maybe I do it by accident, but it's not my intention to participate or to steer or to give any, unless I'm asked, but typically you're not asked. So when they discuss a trail and I think, man, that trail is such a waste of money, I don't say anything. I just say, you guys, as an independent board or commission, discuss it, you recommend it, I'm going to tell the council what you guys recommended, and then I'll say, I really think it's not a good idea, or I think it's a great idea. So I don't even, and that's maybe where, as new councillors, we have to get a little bit more comfortable, and maybe Dirk, maybe you could explain or weigh in on this as well. Because it was my understanding that you listened.
Well, I think this is something that council needs to decide. What do you want the role of a liaison to be? I don't think there's any legal requirement around this. It's something that was discussed at some length as part of the working agreement the council worked on before, I think. So I think that's the council's role to determine what the role of the liaison ought to be.
And I think that, Kim and Barbara, Mayor Pro Tem, did do some work around council, the boards and commissions. I think historically, we've tried as liaisons to do just that, which is not to influence them. Like when I was listening to, in any board setting, is that to, like Councilor Buell is saying, speak on behalf of council, kind of where, in general, that's what you try to do is your best understanding of where council last was or why council is potentially going in a certain direction. But and then bring that information back. You're just that liaison, so you're sitting in the meeting, you're listening to what they're talking about, because we appoint them for their level of expertise, and so we want to bring that back. And so I see it as their opportunity to provide, just as you're saying, the recommendation to us, hopefully unfiltered by ourselves. I mean, that's ideal, I think. I don't know if we have that in writing anywhere, but that is generally, historically, I think, what we've tried to do.
And do you agree with that too, Mayor Baxter? Or?
Yeah, I do, and I don't think that you are presenting what the conversation that we were considering having in the light in which it was actually intended.
And that's, I don't want to go into detail of what your email says. I didn't want to be made an example. I wanted to clarify what is the role of a board and council. And if that is clear, then I basically want to say, well, if we all agree on that, let's stick to it.
Right.
Yeah. That's a little bit, so I don't want to say this project or that person, no. I think this is a higher level.
Well, but you did. You started out with that, so.
If you want to go into that.
No,
that's
all I'm saying is that, first of all, I would have appreciated you talking to me about it, because I think there's some things about it that you don't understand and you don't know about the process that happened and the reasoning for the possible conversation if the IAB wanted to have it. So that I would have appreciated you talking with me about it. And I think that that's one of our working agreements, is even though I don't know whether or not those councils have adopted it or not, but the idea that you speak to a councilor if there's something you're confused about, you don't understand, you're not happy with, you speak to them first and you air that with them rather than airing it in public. So that would be my request to you.
So again, I don't know the details of the email.
I know you don't, that's what I'm saying.
But I'm not going into it. I'm talking about the board and commission. So I just wanted to bring it to a higher level.
Right.
What is our role on the board and commission as the liaison? Because the next step of that is, and I have the working agreement as another topic.
Good.
The next part of it is, if I, as a council member, want to speak on your board, where you're the liaison, I have a feeling, so first of all, I thought that would not be a very good practice. Because if a council member speaks at the board, you're automatically gonna influence the board, yeah? So I would sit in your meeting, you'd be the liaison, and you would be like quiet and taking notes, I guess, or, just reporting what the council does, and then they start their meeting, and then you listen. And then all of a sudden, I start barging in as a councillor that's just a community member, I guess, and it will influence. So this is another question, like where is our role? Where do we stop?
Historically, again, on that, I've never seen that happen. I mean, maybe there is a time or two where a counselor is invited for a very particular reason. Off the top of my head, I can't even think. But generally, I think that we try to communicate via our liaison to that board.
As a council?
As a council. And so, because we're not trying to influence individual boards. That's, again, the reason, my opinion is we go through a lot of work to vet and appoint people to our councils because of their background and their experience and their unique experiences that they bring to the table, and I want to hear from them.
Good.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say that I would love to to read the working agreement, maybe us all agree on a working agreement, because I think it's important for sure, and us to get on board with it since we're newer. I would also like to say that we're all human and we all make mistakes and bring things to council that we shouldn't bring, or maybe say something like I'm asked my opinion on a board and I give it and maybe I shouldn't have, or whatever, right? But I also feel like us knowing that we have our best interests of the community at heart, and no one, I don't think, I would hope, is doing anything vindictive, out of bounds. And if we do, call me, and tell me hey, Jess, why, would you say something like that? I'm like, oh shoot, I'm sorry. Just like I did after the last council meeting, I can do better and I apologize. And, own
No, I completely agree.
Own our mistakes.
But I do think that we have to have the same view
Absolutely.
of
And
what
that's
is
what I'm saying,
right and
working
wrong
agreement.
and where our boundaries are.
Yeah.
And that's where the working agreement, but also just us, and unfortunately Barbara Nosebird is not here, is just to confirm between us. Are we participating during a liaison, as a liaison on the board and commission or not? And if we are interested in a topic at someone else's board, are we going to participate, or are we going to wait until it comes to the council and then have that discussion?
Maybe.
Those are two.
You bring up really good questions. Why don't you bring up your working agreement discussion, because those could fall under that. Okay. In our past council, we spent a significant amount of time approving a working agreement, quite a bit of time, a couple city council sessions, lots of discussion around it. But that was the previous council. This council, in my opinion, would need to approve their own working agreement, and those kind of questions could go in there and be discussed during a working session together.
But I would advocate that the working agreement you've done is probably a lot of the same work that we would do.
Yeah, you can use it as a draft.
I was going to say, let's not double the work like that.
Good idea.
Crazy, right? Start there and then develop.
And add or subtract or whatever works.
Yeah. And that working agreement, I think, Dirk, you sent it out a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure if everybody received it and had a chance to look at it, but so I'll go into that document here for a second. I had a couple of, and this is again, I'm just trying to confirm with you guys.
Can we have a study session on this working agreement? Because I haven't read it or looked at it. Dirk sent it out, and if it's not on the agenda, no offense.
Right. So
let me just read it and then give you something to think about for a study session. Is that okay?
Okay, or you could just say, I'm really interested in it, because I have a very...
from my point of view, I think that we can have this discussion in a study session or wherever we want to. For you to read it right now is not a very efficient use of our time, because I don't think we're going to have a long, big discussion about it. I don't think we're going to be adding to it or subtracting to it from it. I think the question that you're asking is there support from council to have a discussion about it? And if there is, then great, then we'll do it when we schedule it.
Is that correct? Are we understanding you right?
Well, let's first direct city staff. So I would be interested in having a discussion on the working agreement and the role of a council on boards and commissions for a future study session, ideally the next one.
Okay, I'm definitely in support of the conversation. I would suggest that we have the conversation at the same time we possibly have the conversation as a working agreement or separate, it doesn't really matter, but I'm not certain if we're gonna have the capacity to have it in our next study session. I think I would have to turn to Jose.
I would just say our next, I don't think it's a 911 for me anyways, to like have it done, in 2 weeks. I would just say at some point, like, that we have it from Dirk, we can pull it up before the study session, we can look at it and review it. And I'm fine with how everyone.
Definitely want to have the conversation.
Well, the thing is, I don't think it will take too much time of staff. We have an old working agreement.
We use that.
If we read it. then
We just have
conform-
budget and, we'll read
Worried
it.
about the agenda items already on it.
Oh, I see, yeah. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we have the
I'm not
budget
sure.
coming up and,
Jose, maybe you can advise us on that.
We're packed.
yeah.
I mean,
afraid of that.
that's it. Now, what I would tell you is if the council wishes is to put it on a study session, I would much rather you give me a time frame than leaving it open-ended.
Okay.
Because open-ended, it just kind of leaves me with this, well, when you get a chance or not, I just, if it's by November, then by November. If it's by the end of October, by the end of October. But giving me something definitive would definitely help.
So Jose, in the past, one of the things that we've done is we've gotten a list, like say through the end of November or maybe through the middle of December, just till Christmas. We've gotten a list of all the items that staff and council have decided should be on agenda, on study sessions. And then we have the recommendations, like this one, for example, and then we prioritize it. So is this a more priority than what was on the study session or what you were thinking would be on the study session for November something? And if so, then it shifts. If not, then it goes until whenever is the next open time. And that's the way in the past we've worked, and it's worked pretty well because then we're working on the priority things that need to get done, like whether it's budget or what have you, before we have to have a meeting where we make a decision. And I think that kind of timing is where it, so you could just send out to council, here's all the things that we currently are planning to have. Do you have a priority on them that would include this or not?
And maybe to add to that, so because I'm hearing it goes out further in time, which whatever works for council and the agenda, I'll be okay with. But I do want to point out, I had also a meeting with Dirk and Jose and Seth Fertney about some of the things on the boards and commissions and how public comments are addressed. I wanted to give you that little update. Going back to the topic I just brought up, I do have a concern that if council presents to staff or to a board and commission, then let's put it this way, until we have that meeting, I would feel a lot more comfortable to be informed in advance, as well as have the opportunity to present other thoughts, so that it's not, that it's open to all council members if there is any presentation taking place at a board or commission meeting, until we have had a discussion and consensus on a working agreement. So if that takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. And the second topic on that would be, in the working agreement, it states that council members should communicate pretty much through the city manager and not to staff directly or limited to the maximum. I sometimes am concerned because sometimes I'm surprised of the level a project has taken place. And I wonder where did that come from? And I don't want to assume anything. I'd like to trust everybody out in the world. But I would feel a lot more comfortable if we all agree to make sure that everything that's communicated to staff below the city manager level gets copied to city manager and ideally city council until we have that working agreement discussion, so that we don't have that gray zone. And then if the working agreement discussion needs to be taking place in February, I'm perfectly fine. But these are like very standard, in my opinion, documented elements of the current working agreement. But I'm not sure if this is what we do.
I'm sorry, I feel like you're creating such an issue out of something that's totally not an issue. And maybe I'm sitting here by myself, but like even the emails this weekend, like I'm, at a hockey rink and I'm getting these emails about the agenda times. And I'm like, they are suggested times. Like why do we need 15 emails about this? Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Like you talk about the work that staff is putting in, the work that you try to get staff to do is also the same.
I come to that in a minute.
All I'm saying, Olivier, is I feel like you make these big issues and, you're pointing fingers at Kim at this point in time, which I'm not saying Kim isn't wrong or hasn't done anything wrong. I'm not saying I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not saying I asked Nicole to set a meeting up for the CEC, and then I was like, oh my gosh, should I have done that? Like,
Yes.
but do you know what I'm saying? Like, but then again, it's just like, okay, it's going to take 2 seconds. Like, I trust that we can be adults and do this and not have to have a 15-minute discussion about how we can't communicate with one another without copying everyone on anything. Like this, it's crazy to me that I'm not saying that there's not issues or that someone doesn't feel neglected or like whatever, but I feel like you're doing your best job on your boards and commissions. I'm not doubting like what you're doing. I'm not doubting what Kim's doing. I'm not doubting what Melissa's doing. I trust that you're doing your job and you're coming back to us. And I feel like you don't trust. I mean, you constantly question Jose and the staff and what they're directed to do. And any email, I've never thought, oh yeah, why are they doing that? Like they were never directed to do that. There's not one time. So I'm just so confused as to where you're getting this. And I'm like, there's part of me that's like, some of the times you have concerns about things, it's because you didn't agree with the four of us. And that, like, you don't have to. I don't agree with everyone all the time. I mean, and we can disagree, but we still need to be civil and like respect each other. And there's a complete lack of that, I feel, with you and the way you talk and you roll your eye. Like, that's where we got back to last week, right? So I'm saying we can do better. We can work together better, right? Can we get there?
So I'll just respond to 2 examples. If 2 weeks ago I get cut off and restricted in time because someone looks at the clock on the schedule because of approximate times, and I see that we have 10 minutes allocated for 18 consent agenda items, and I have questions on it, and by the time someone reads 18 items, the 10 minutes is up.
We were only 15 minutes behind today.
But I asked simply, you can say, I'm pretending to create this a big issue. I send a simple email, put some more realistic times in there. It is not supposed to be a scientific study. Make it an hour. But I don't want to be held to, we're going to restrict your time to 3 minutes.
Olivier, it was 6 emails and you had a 45-minute monologue last meeting. Like, it's not like we didn't let you speak. We let you speak. And I am not saying that it was right or wrong and that everyone shouldn't ask questions. And like I said, I appreciate what we did was in executive session. Like, my questions were pretty much answered. I believe that Nicole and Jen are doing their best work. And I trust that process, and I believe in this project and believe that we can make a difference and like try to move that needle a little bit in some of the ways that we really need to, right? I have faith in that. And so all I'm saying is that this issue about boards and commissions, I don't feel it's a 911 and that it has to be taken care of before anything else goes forward. I trust you. I trust Kim. I trust Melissa. I think we're a team. When I go to my boards and commissions meeting, I try to speak as a team, and I think we can do better. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I appreciate that. To me, there's no harm in making it clear and transparent. So if you feel, and because it's very easy for me to say, I love this staff, I think it's great, I think you guys are fantastic, it's easy. What is the harm in securing that it is working the way it's supposed to? There is no effort, in my opinion, to do that.
I agree with you.
And I still trust you. And I still trust you. And I still trust you.
I agree with you. I just said it didn't have to be done tomorrow.
And I didn't say it can be February.
Could I just suggest, remind us that we're at a city council meeting trying to do, productive, efficient business. And so I think that the best way to proceed forth in this conversation is to agree that we want to have a discussion in a study session, possibly as soon as possible, because I think that we are trying to work together as this current team, and it might help us work more productively together. But that conversation should probably have with the boards and commissions discussion and how we communicate, including emails, and do we CC everybody? All that can be in a study session discussion, hopefully sooner than later. That's how I would proceed forth.
And I'm fine with it.
And I would like us to prioritize, because I don't think otherwise we're going to get consensus around things. So I'm not against having the discussion, I just think we need to prioritize.
Okay, I agree. So did you get that, Jose? We're
That
hoping.
we need to prioritize. I think the first step was what I just sent right now that got forwarded from Amy is our study session agenda calendar.
Oh, thank you, okay.
It does have items that are laid out.
All right,
And, you know, the council sets priority. If there's an item there that's there, we can make room for it.
okay,
It is a living document. We update that every 2 weeks with our staff because at times we may have an item like our CIP today that gets carried over to another agenda. Sometimes there's an item that we prepare for it to be ready. For example, the CAFR wasn't quite ready, so it continues to move, but it will give you the list of topics and things that are on there.
yeah, it's important.
Yeah, and I think when you look in there, you're going to see some big time items in there that are important, things that may have been requested in the past or part of things that might be wanting to request.
Okay.
So just a good.
How about to move forward and to move this discussion, how about if we all take a look at the study session calendar draft and send comments, CCing all of council, if they'd like, to Jose with their thoughts on prioritization. Can we do that to try to move this conversation forward?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, good. That's what we'll do.
Gotcha.
What's our homework?
Okay.
I have one more topic.
Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully you will allow me to finish this one here. Is the housing update and the work and the housing dashboard. During the retreat in June, I had asked to get some basic housing data. City staff provided a housing update with history going back 10 years. And for the current year, a summary of completed housing units and larger projects developments, as well as larger projects that are pending, so in various stages between initial design all the way up to ongoing construction. It's this housing data sheet is a very simple one-page document, and it was provided mid-July by city staff, this is where it's very interesting, along with the comment that city staff is working on a housing dashboard. Now, I asked city manager and staff for an update only 2 weeks ago on the housing data sheet and that dashboard that city management, city staff informed me of, because I never had mentioned it. I never asked for the housing dashboard, never mentioned it, never even used that term until staff informed me they were working on it. So you've seen the string of like 20 or something emails that I've gotten because of that request. Secondly, the housing data was discussed and agreed to during that retreat. I believe that sheet gives very important data. It shows how many units are expected to come on the market, gives you an idea of how much housing we are foreseeing, where we should priorities, especially in affordable housing, rental housing. It gives you a little bit of information, which was 25 units completed in mid-July and 729 units pending, which is several factors more than average over the past years. Updating that housing sheets means the changes that happened between mid-July to the current date. So to me, it seems a very simple task. It's a one-page document. It is a simple task, limited staff time, because it should be readily available data at the planning department. And I don't think that there is going to be very many larger developments that have shown up in the past month. Regardless, I've received extreme resistance from several people on this council for this request, stating it was directing staff. It requires a majority of council to agree to. It might take up too much staff time. So I'm going to just ask if council members still believe that that's their position and why. So I've never asked for the housing dashboard, just asked for an update on what they were doing in the first place. and for the housing data sheet, the one-page document. Go ahead.
I appreciated the request of information that you did in July. I thought it was good information. I also thought it was very helpful for us to have that for our retreat. And depending on, staff feedback on how much time it would take to update that information, maybe we should just talk about with staff how often we'd like to see that updated regularly. It's good information, especially as housing is such an important issue for all of us. And so understanding our stock, understanding our data around it, I think is helpful, sorry. And I would just want to make sure from staff that it's not too onerous of a request, and how often, maybe we talk about how often that they might be able to update that for us, what's reasonable. And I guess I'm looking at you, Kevin, but that's because I see you better than Jose right now.
I'm happy to jump in here. We do have monthly permit data on the website every single month, which would show new permits issued. To compile it into a different format, yes, we can do that. Can we do it monthly? Probably. Could we do it weekly? We probably could do that.
I'm not sure that's, yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of moving parts right now, as you all know, with housing. We have the study that's going to be presented here shortly to the COG.
September 16th.
Right, which is a week away. I've talked with staff again about things that they see as important components of a housing dashboard.
Great.
And it probably needs to be touched on even further relative to Councilor Bosman's interests as well as other councilors. We are also funding the ability to put that into a more usable format on our website for next year. Right now, what we do is essentially print a very static sheet of permit data, and it's there on a monthly basis, but something a little more dynamic that would allow for more regular updates. Certainly reasonable to have that. And, some of these things take time.
Yeah.
And my apologies to you, Councilor Bosman, for the reaction that I've gave you, which was, I think we just gave you largely everything we have 5 weeks ago. We probably could have updated it with the handful of additional units we have. We did not do that. But we recognize the need for this data, and we intend to provide that data as time allows. And we will work towards the dashboard that everyone's in agreement with, and ultimately we'll have a very good tool to work with once we get there.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I asked a question, and I fully appreciate, and I'm actually happy that you didn't respond, because it exploded with emails. And I only sent one follow-up email, like, is this too much to ask? And not to you, and I sent that email to council. So I actually think it's better if the smart thing was to stay out of it and see how that develops at the council level. So appreciate that.
I would only just ask the next question of, if we have the conversation of potentially, maybe we make it easy for staff and talk about how often we would want that updated. I don't think we need it weekly or monthly. I mean, I think I might be fine quarterly, maybe.
Or if there's a project like you're working on with the COG, like that report to us would be awesome. Like, I just don't feel like we need to like duplicate or like be excessive.
I agree.
And so when you sent that email, I was like, we got the housing data, like we received it. And so that was sort of my, like, it was July, it was only August when you asked again. Like, and so I think that I didn't respond to your email, but I just was sort of like, why do we need it again when we just got it? I mean, we know all the projects, they come through to us, right?
That's why it's
I
so
can pull
small,
up planning commission meetings and see if there's more projects. Like, I don't need staff to do more work.
But you saw how it exploded, and I think that was a very big shock
And again,
to me.
we're in a city council meeting and you're calling people out that we should be supporting on a team. And that's concerning to me.
Well,
So,
how
I
would you
actually don't know
feel,
what you're talking
Jessica,
about,
if
Olivier.
it explodes in your face behind the screens? I mean, you would not be happy. You ask a
here's the
simple
deal.
question.
He was wanting the housing dashboard update, and there was some pushback from council as to directing staff, whether that's directing staff. And so we're just having the conversation now about how often that gets updated. And
So I know, but I don't understand, to your point, I don't understand why you don't talk to people about things that bother you.
I do it now, and the
But-
primary thing is to get the update,
Olivier,
because in
the-
the end, we're professional.
if-
I can look you in the face, and I can have a discussion, and you can vote A, and I can vote B, and I'll be perfectly happy with it. I'm perfectly happy with it.
So one of the things, you're really mentioning this working agreement so many times, is that rather than airing grievances at a city council meeting, you talk to people, you talk to the counselor that you have an issue with, and you two try to work it out, and you try to have a conversation about it, so that it doesn't happen again, and so that we don't keep having these meetings where, exactly what you said. So that would be my request again, is that if you have an issue about what someone is saying that you're doing or not doing, then talk to them.
But I don't have an issue with you or you or you. I think we're all professional. We don't have to be buddy-buddy either. But if I see 20 emails shoot at me because I asked for a housing update, then I'm at a complete loss.
So are you
because I'm-
exaggerating? Were there 20 emails?
No, there was
I
not
don't know,
20 emails.
10
Okay, so first of all, and I don't know which emails you're talking about. So if you want to tell me when it is, I can look at it, but I'm not going to do that now. We could talk about that another time.
Here's the bigger picture.
So I
The
don't
bigger
understand.
picture is,
I don't understand.
the bigger picture is we don't need to be doing this here, right? The bigger picture is what kind of leadership are we supposed to be? What kind of leadership do you want to be, Olivier? Me, Kim, when you talked about cutting you off in a meeting, Melissa, that was a good point. I wouldn't want to be cut off on a meeting. I also wouldn't go on a 45-minute rant when I could feel the pushback a little bit, right? So being a good leader and working together, that is not this. If I have an issue with Kim, which I've had before, I give her a call. I'm like, listen, this is, right? And I don't have to agree with her, but I don't have to be disagreeable, right? And so that is the thing, I didn't even respond to any of your emails. Nothing that you have just said about boards and commissions or about those emails were directed at me at all. I'm not a part of it. I have a problem with this. And I have a problem with the way that you are leading, and I want to do better. I want to be a part of a team that does better. That is what I want. So let's try to figure it out. Part of the working agreement for me is going to be that this doesn't happen again, because it's unprofessional, and I don't like it.
I look forward to that support.
The interesting thing here, though, I have to say, is that in his case, he was requesting information, and he was told by council a couple, maybe it was just one member, I didn't respond either, though that potentially it was directing staff. And so his next best step is to bring it up in public saying, do I have council support to get this information? I'm seeking it. And so, there are some instances where bringing things up in public makes sense, and it doesn't have to be, we don't need to be defensive about it. If you wanted information, I think you got your answer. I think that staff, we're trying to get to that answer, as I was trying to get that for you, which is how often and when can we get you that information? Because it was a fair request. And if you didn't get the answer that you wanted via email, then you bring it up in public like you're doing. And so I think, it's okay.
I agree. The way, just like I did, what I said last meeting, I don't regret saying. The way I said it, I apologize for.
Right.
So it's the way we lead. That's all I'm talking about.
Well, and to your point, absolutely. If there's information that one of the counselors would like to see, then you bring it up in a council meeting. But you don't bring it up in a council meeting attacking other counselors and being derogatory toward them and being accusatory toward them and exaggerating the response and making a big deal about it. You just say, do I have council support for having this information on a monthly, weekly, quarterly meeting? That's how you ask for it. You don't have to be attacking to other people. So that's my perspective. I absolutely agree with you. And I absolutely agree that Olivier has the right and actually the obligation to bring that question up. But possibly the way he did it is not the most helpful. So I think that's the problem here.
And really,
the
study
question.
sessions are a great opportunity for this kind of conversation
But I
and to
support-
learn. Because in past councils, that's what we've done.
So why don't we decide where we're going with this? Because it's 8:45 and 8:50. Where are we going with this?
I support quarterly housing updates by Kevin, for sure. I think that that's great information, especially now as we're going through all this housing stuff and these efforts. And then I support a working agreement discussion about how we communicate and doing the best that we can as a council, boards and commissions, like agreements with us. I would want that all to be in there. When we feel like it can fit. Yes, I want to work together better. I also feel like we can, because we're adults and professionals.
Well, we are also having a conversation about interacting with each other.
Yeah.
And I don't remember when that's scheduled for, but I'm hoping.
October 7th.
Right, so.
The same day as
Olivier, will you be
CML.
there?
October
The
7th
7th?
with Suzie Fair.
Suzie.
Yeah, about
the
working
CML.
together as a team?
It's in the morning. CML is in the afternoon.
Yeah,
CML, I think, is like
4 o'clock in the afternoon. That one's early in the morning.
or early. I know some people work.
That's it. I had to cancel the other one as well.
So you didn't know about that meeting?
I must have seen it, but when you said October 7, the bell rang because of the CML meeting, because I just canceled the other CML meeting in, where is it, Westminster?
I think it's really important that we're all at the Suzie Fair
Yeah.
one, and I think that would be a great opportunity for us to work
Because it's
together.
about working together as a team.
No, I absolutely agree. I think we can do a lot better.
Okay.
So that would be-
So
It's at 9 a.m. on the 7th.
So I hear that we're housing dashboard quarterly information?
Yep.
I just would like to hear from Kevin. The dashboard, is that a living document or is that something that you feed once?
Okay, I'm using the wrong word. Housing information until there's a dashboard created. Let's not put a date on the dashboard because that's something we don't know how staff is working with. But the information is available to us on a quarterly basis for housing information.
Great.
Okay. We will schedule at some point, based upon council's prioritizing, a study session for working agreement and boards and commission relationships with council, or something to that effect, yes? Is that, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so is that it for this evening then?
That's all I had. Thank you.
Great. Meeting adjourned.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.